I will slowly move towards introducing the third presentation of the day. The third presentation of the day is about exactly Germany. So we have Hendrik Lume, who is going to talk about how X-Road is accelerating digital transformation in the Schleswig Holstein region. Hendrik, the same rules of engagement as for basically everyone else so far. The total slot that we will have is like 20 minutes. So for the first 15, as we also did for Quebec and as we did for the presentation of Gustavo, 15 minutes of your own piece, and then we will reserve about 5 minutes at the end for questions. Questions, which I remind everybody that can be asked either by raising a hand, and at that point I will make you speak very briefly, or even better, exactly as it happened for Gustavo and the presentation in Argentina, on Argentina, you can write them in the chat and I will keep following there in order to make sure to ask them. So Hendrik, I will thank you again for the help branch that you extended to me before, and then just pass you the word, a little introduction, and the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you very much, Federico. My name is Hendrik Lume. I work for a company called Nortal, so I'm not an employee of the state of Schleswig-Holstein. I'm just working on the project to introduce X-Road in Schleswig-Holstein, helping them out. Unfortunately, they had some long planned internal workshops today, so they weren't able to attend on their own. And so I have the honor of presenting a little bit about this project of introducing X-Road in Schleswig-Holstein to all of you. I've structured this in a very simple way. First, I'm going to give you some context about why Schleswig-Holstein is doing this, who or what Schleswig-Holstein is, and also a little bit of context of where Germany is at the moment and how this relates to Schleswig-Holstein. And then I'll go a little bit more into the details of the project. Just like Canada and Argentina, Germany is also a federal state organized or structured into 16 different federal states, of which Schleswig-Holstein is the northernmost state, nestled between the North Sea to the west and the Baltic Sea to the east, which is also why they have historic connections with many other countries around the Baltic Sea, including Finland and Estonia. It's not a very large state by population, almost 3 million people. And when it comes to digital affairs, they have, I would say now, a long tradition of taking this topic very seriously. They have a dedicated minister for digital affairs, which is something that is not very common yet in German federal states. And what they're actually most known for when it comes to digital government, I would say, is that they are very strongly focused on digital sovereignty. And they have been working very actively to promote, or not only promote, but to work with open source software within the state. Have recently begun to push out Microsoft products, which has gained them a lot of international attention in the press, with articles from newspapers even as far away as New Zealand. And next to that, of course, they are also one of NICE's most recent members, the first member from Germany. And maybe talking a little bit, also giving a little bit of context about where Germany is at the moment. Germany has, well, let's say it's not the most advanced country when it comes to public sector digitization in Europe, usually ranging somewhere in the middle or rather in the bottom half, I think, of EU countries. Nonetheless, Germany has been working very actively on introducing e-government for the last couple of decades, with a strong push over the last few years to make more and more e-services available. And now we're sort of on the precipice of entering this digital government era, where we don't only want digital services to be available online, but to automate them increasingly, to make them more user-friendly. And while this in Germany 10, 15 years ago, talking about making things more efficient and letting go of people in the public sector, due to that was sort of a big no-no 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays, it's really becoming a requirement, because there are so many people who are retiring among the civil service workforce. So it's really essential for Germany to be able to make its public sector more efficient. And of course, for that, in order to be able to build more efficient digital public services, interoperability is absolutely crucial. So, in order to be able to automate services, to make them user-friendly, to make them fully end-to-end digitalized, we have recognized in Germany that we need a good way, a better way to exchange data and to realize interoperability. And interoperability, often we explain it in a way that you can sort of explain interoperability among two main dimensions. One is data exchange, and the other one, which is also very important, is data storage. And you can sort of differentiate these two dimensions along how centralized or decentralized data storage is, and how heterogeneous or unified data exchange is. And in Germany and Schleswig-Holstein, we have, well, in both dimensions, we have major challenges. Just like Jonathan mentioned, for Quebec, data is very siloed in Germany. It's stored very, very decentralized. So we don't have one population registry for the whole country or for each state, but we have population registries on the municipal level. So we have hundreds of them. And the same is true for many other types of data, for many other registries. And then what has happened over the last decades is that we have built data exchange solutions for different use cases. So also this data exchange landscape, unfortunately, is not very unified at all. So what Schleswig-Holstein is trying to do, and what in a similar way is also happening all across Germany, is that in order to make data exchange more technologically unified, we are introducing X-Road. And then there are also other efforts when it comes to data storage. They are introducing a cloud-based registry platform, which aims to modernize data storage to at least technically unify it, even though legally much of it will still be owned by municipalities, in order to make it more easy to exchange data and to automate processes and so on. And it's not only these two topics that Schleswig-Holstein is working on, but I would say what I really like about the way that they're advancing this is that they have quite a structured approach to three very important pillars for the digital government area, for automation and so on. Two I already mentioned, which are data storage and data exchange, but they are also working hard on making data processing more modern and more efficient. So they're introducing actually a Danish solution, which is sort of a toolbox to build more efficiently, more modern case management systems, which are then, of course, the basis for using all this data and automating processes. So this is sort of the basis of where Schleswig-Holstein is coming from and why they have begun this project to introduce X-Road in Schleswig-Holstein. So let's go into the project itself a little bit more. The project, first of all, is run by the central IT management, so a central unit in Schleswig-Holstein, which is responsible for digital government infrastructure. And fortunately, this unit is attached directly at the state prime minister's office, where the head of this office is also in the rank of a minister and is also the digital minister. So the big advantage that we have is that we are very close to, let's say, the source of political power in Schleswig-Holstein, and that what sort of they want to do has quite some political weight, and it's quite, I think, the colleague from Argentina was talking about the realities of power within the bureaucracy, and here in this case, we are quite lucky that we're sort of in the highest position of political power within the state. Of course, their job overall is the sort of continuous modernization of digital public infrastructure, of the laws, and also of coordinating with the federal government and indirectly also with the EU and all the municipalities that are in the state. And what we are currently aiming to do in this initial phase of introducing X-Road in Schleswig-Holstein, which we officially begun in June of this year, First of all, we are setting up an X-Road infrastructure in order to be able to quickly implement pilot projects, pilot use cases. And then we're also preparing for the long-term hosting, which will be done by a state IT provider. And of course, as every country is different and every country has different requirements, we also need to work on identifying necessary adapters and components like data catalogs, service catalogs, self-service portal, all kinds of different things. And then let's say the core of what we want to do in this initial phase is actually to implement X-Road, start implementing X-Road very quickly through pilot use cases, not do too much theory, not deliberate too much and create long papers, but to actually try it out with real-life pilot use cases, which I'll introduce in a second. Then what we also need is to actually engage the relevant stakeholders within the administration, state administration, municipalities, and so on, within the state, to make them understand what it is that we're actually doing and to make sure that they will start using X-Road on their own in the future and that they will bring more and more use cases to the table. Obviously, we're also working on the legal foundation for X-Road. There will be sort of X-Road regulation specific to Schleswig Holstein, oriented on the Estonian example, and several other legal foundations that we're working on. And of course, as also was mentioned by the colleague from Argentina, governance is quite important. And therefore, one of the aims of this project is also to define a governance structure specific for X-Road in Schleswig Holstein. The project is sort of structured along those goals. So temporary infrastructure, long-term infrastructure, components and adapters, pilot projects, communication, legal, and governance. What's more interesting, I think, is the pilot projects pilot use cases that we're currently working on. The first two are with private sector actors. The first one is with a local bank, and this bank, as all other banks in Germany, is required by law because of some anti-money laundering legislation to validate the address data of their customers every 5 years, I think. And at the moment, this is an annoying process because they often ask, or they mostly ask everyone in online banking to confirm their address, but many people don't do it. So they actually have to run after some people who don't do it, and have to query the population registry individually for each person, which takes quite a lot of time. And therefore, we want to allow them in the future to do this automatically. So they will get an X-Road service where they can query the population registry for their customers, for their clients, to fulfill this legal obligation that they have mostly automatically. The second use case is also very interesting. This is a public health insurance company, of which we have several hundred even in Germany. And they have a challenge with setting the fee level for self-employed people, because there they can't get it from their employer. So the self-employed people have to transmit this data on a very regular basis. Oftentimes they don't do it on time. Then they set the maximum contribution. Then, that often isn't correct. So they have to sort of repay them. It's a very annoying process. So in the future, with the permission of the insured people, we want to allow the public health insurance company to query this data automatically. And that will definitely help them to become more efficient. And it's also going to take a lot of bureaucratic burden away from the insured people, from the self-employed insured people. The third use case that we have recently started is also regarding the automated calculation of fees, in this context for kindergarten fees, which are related to the income. So the more you earn, the more you pay. But the negative side effect of this is that there are a lot of people in the public administration who actually have to work on this. So in the case of Kiel, which is a city of about 250,000 people, there are about 40 people who are dealing with this in the public administration. And so we also want to help them using X-Road to get the data that they need, or most of the data that they need to make this calculation, in order to be able for them to automate it. And the fourth use case, which we are just starting, and I was happy to see Martin on this call, concerns the transmission of data related to ambulance usage. And what I really like about this use case is that this is the first example of a use case that came to us on its own, basically, because after A press release was done by the digital minister in Schleswig Holstein. Martin sort of suggested this use case because he's working in this field, and that's exactly what we want to happen in the future, that people within the public administration or even within the business sector or health sector, that they understand basically what X-Road is, what opportunities it offers, and that they start coming up with use cases on their own and starting to implement use cases on their own. So I'm very happy that this is the first example of such a use case that we'll begin to implement soon. And then as a last slide, second last slide, just a view of the roadmap. As I mentioned, we started just recently with the implementation of X-Road. Schleswig-Holstein only became a NIS member in February of this year, so we started the project then in June, set up already a test environment. Going to do a temporary production environment very soon. Then next year we'll focus on the implementation phase, where we will hand over the infrastructure to the state IT provider. We will start implementing adapters and components necessary to scale X-Road in the future. We'll continue to work on pilot use cases, and then hopefully by 2027, use cases will be implemented mostly without our help, without the help of the central IT service, but just by the different agencies on their own. And in order to make sure that happens, we are working very actively to set up an X-Road community in Schleswig-Holstein to make everybody understand what it is, how it is to be used, what the legal foundations are, et cetera, how to implement it technically. And then, of course, we're also working on the legal foundation and the governance structures. And if you want to know more, we have already set up a website where you can read, well, in German, but with the help of Google Translate in any language you want, about what we're doing and how to contact us. So thank you very much. That's it from me for now.
Hendrik, amazing. Thank you very much. And you said if anybody wants to know more, actually, I can confirm that, yes, there are already a few people who do want to know more. Actually, there are about, 4 questions of Hendrik. So I will pair 2, first of all. So Thomas, for example, was rather commenting about the fact that population registry services availability seems to have crucial role while developing and implementing any of the e-services for citizens. I think you can see as well in the chat what's been written. So that's an initiative that's been welcomed, but Indrek instead has a question on your opinion on what is the real problem in creating one population register versus 100 different ones, for example, in Germany. He's mentioning different reasons. Obviously, for everyone to understand what we're talking about, just open the chat of the call in case you haven't done so yet. But Hendrik, what would be your input on Indrek's question, for example, about 1 versus 100, let's say?
So as to the reason why this is the case in Germany, and I think it's hundreds, if not even more than 1,000, I think it's several hundred population registries that we have. It's just historical. It's just because back in the day, it was the churches that had the sort of registry of who was born, who lives there, and who died, and who got married. And that never really changed. And I don't think it makes a lot of sense. In reality, we also have a central registry. So the tax office, the federal tax office, has a database that sort of mirrors all the different municipal data registries, which is not a lot of people know and would be quite controversial, I think, if it were more well known. I'm hoping that Germany will also sort of take more data away from the municipalities, because it doesn't make so much sense. It's just a historical thing, and I think a good compromise would be for the states to take this data. And in many states, we have these mirror databases where they mirror the municipal population registries, so that will make it easier to access them, but it's not really the right way of doing it. The right way would be to consolidate it more.
Hendrik, I saw 3 more questions, actually, all for you and all about the case that you have just explained. We need to move on, but I think that I will attempt to group these 3 into one that is about, interest in X-Road, as far as I'm understanding. Because, for example, Aquile mentioned that, basically how to engage relevant stakeholders to make sure that this kind of ideas do not just remain, let's say, as meeting room talks, but actually but actually overcome the challenges of, for example, lack of political will. Still connected to the topic of interest in this, there is also the question from Harry, who was mentioning what kind of interest instead there is from other German states or at the federal level, for example, while looking at the case of the region that you've just presented. And also Mike at the end also kind of like plays into this point a little bit, because he's asking, he's curious if political changes globally have accelerated the viability of an X-road type of solution. I think this is also about the question of like interest that externally maybe use cases or like specific case studies can raise. But I will keep this one from Mike actually as last. I will reroute it to Petteri after their presentation. But Hendrik, what would you say about the first two?
So the stakeholders, okay, this question about
stakeholders and other regions' interest, let's say.
Okay, let me start with the first one. So what we see is that actually potential service consumers, it's very, very easy to find potential service consumers. It's very, very easy to find potential use cases because the service consumers are those who benefit. Like they will be able to automate their services. They will be able to make their services better. So this is not a challenge that we have. The challenge that we have is convincing the service providers, the data owners, to share their data and to implement X-road services, because they initially don't benefit so much. And here we are lucky that we are sort of in the prime, or that our customer, Schleswig Holstein, the team is located in the Prime Minister's office, and there's a lot of political backing to this. So what basically we're able to do is we're able to convince the minister to go to the other minister and tell them, please make sure that this is possible, and please make sure that your team is able to share this data. So that's really a very important aspect. And then, of course, we're also looking at some, I didn't go into the details of the legal foundations that we're building, but there will also be a provision in Schleswig-Holstein law, which will be probably unique in Germany, which will force government agencies to share their data if the potential service consumer has a legal basis to obtain this data. So they will not make X-road mandatory directly, even though they would be willing to do it in the future. But there's sort of strong political push for the data providers to share their data. And when it comes to interest outside of Schleswig-Holstein within Germany, then I can say that this is very attentively looked at by other federal states as well. We get a lot of interest from other federal states now that Schleswig-Holstein has been the first mover. And I'm quite sure that if Schleswig-Holstein can show success with a few use cases, other states will follow, especially as all of these use cases that we've shown that we're working on at the moment, they're also relevant for other states. So it's if Schleswig-Holstein proves to be successful, then I'm sure that other states will follow.
Hendrik, thanks a lot for this.